Welcome to the Word for Life podcast, a daily devotional covering the entire Bible from Genesis to Revelation.
In Leviticus chapter 5, verse 14 to chapter 6, verse 7, we read about God's commandments about the guilt offering. From chapter 5, verse 1 to 13, we read the continuation of chapter 4, where we saw about God's commandments about the sin offering. But from verse 14 onwards, we see God's commands about the guilt offering. Now, what is the guilt offering? Verse 15 explains. Verse 15 says, "When anyone is unfaithful to the Lord by sinning unintentionally in regard to any of the Lord's holy things, they are to bring to the Lord as a penalty a ram from the flock, one without defect, and of the proper value in silver. According to the sanctuary shekel, it is a guilt offering." You see, friends, the things in the tabernacle are holy things. That is why only priests had to carry the Ark of the Covenant. Some of the offerings were reserved only for the priest. Only priests can sacrifice on the altar. Even in Mount Sinai, when God descended, He allowed only Moses. All this emphasized to Israel that God was holy and he must not be treated like a human being. That is one of the reasons why God prohibited idol worship, because anyone can touch and even make an idol and keep it anywhere they want. But God cannot be treated like he is an object or a man. He is so apart from human beings. Therefore, when an Israelite unintentionally touches a holy thing or handles a holy thing, he will be punished. Later in the Old Testament, we will read about even the sons of Aaron who were put to death by God because they mishandled holy things in the tabernacle. And also later we will read about few people who touched the Ark of the Covenant and were put to death by God. And that is why God provided the guilt offering. When Israelites do not honor the holiness of God, they will bring God's wrath on themselves. And that is why God gave a provision called the guilt offering, so that if an Israelite unintentionally mishandles God's holy thing, he can receive God's forgiveness by offering the guilt offering. Dear friends, even today, there are things that are holy to the Lord. His presence is holy. Our bodies are holy. And we need to consider them as sacred. And when we unintentionally mishandle them, we need to feel guilty before God and we need to come to His presence and ask for His forgiveness. You see, the guilt offering was twofold. One, an animal sacrifice had to be presented to the Lord, and also a 25% fine needed to be given to the priest. In chapter 6, verse 1 to 7, we read about another guilt that Israelites must be careful about, and that is mishandling other people's property. Now we may wonder how things in the temple and our neighbors' things can be one and the same. You see, God's things are sacred, and so also our neighbors' things are sacred, because they had been given to us in trust. So, not honoring the trust is similar to not honoring the things of God. Friends, Israelites lived in a time like ours. Most people did not care for others. Most people were self-centered, and people and other nations plundered other nations. But God was shaping Israel into a different nation, a holy nation. Therefore, God's people, Israel, must not only love God, but also their neighbors. That is why in chapter 6, verse 2 to 5, this is what we read. "If anyone sins and is unfaithful to the Lord by deceiving a neighbor about something entrusted to them or left in their care, or about something stolen, or if they cheat their neighbor, or if they find lost property and lie about it, or if they swear falsely about any such thing that people may commit, when they sin in any of these ways and realize their guilt, they must return what they have stolen or taken by extortion, or what was entrusted to them, or the lost property they found, or whatever it was they swore falsely about. They must make restitution in full, add a fifth of the value to it, and give it all to the owner on the day they present their guilt offering. And verse 6 continues, and as a penalty, they must bring to the priest, that is to the Lord, their guilt offering, a ram from the flock, one without defect and of the proper value. You see, again we see in two ways an Israelite must clear his guilt away. One, by returning his neighbor's thing with a fine, and also bringing a guilt offering to the Lord. Friends, this is why Jesus told his followers to go make amends with people before they come to give an offering at the altar. When the followers of Jesus come to the altar to offer to the Lord, and they remember that they have an issue with their neighbor, they must leave the offering before the altar. First go and make things right with their neighbor, and only then come and offer to the Lord. Friends, in the New Testament, we have a phrase that constantly gets repeated, and that is one another. God's church is God's community where believers love one another, take care of one another, encourage and build one another. And when believers defraud or sin against one another, they follow the example of Zacchaeus, who gave back what he took from others. In our world, everything is taken casually, but a believer knows that in God's eyes, there are certain things that are sacred. Therefore, a believer maintains the sacredness of the things that God considers to be sacred.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow for the next episode of the Word for Life podcast.